What's up y'all, Jay Immaculate here. In today's video, I'll be going through the mix page of the Sonicware Lofi12 XT and going over some options you have for mixing your beats in the box. When I say mixing beats, I'm talking about adjusting the levels of your sounds so that your listener hears what you want them to hear. So it's subjective. The goals you have for your mix could depend on the sound you're using, the genre of music you're trying to make, and many other things. But hopefully after watching this video, you'll have a better idea of how to approach those goals with the tools built into the Lofi12 XT. Alright, let's get mixing. Before diving into the mix page, let's quickly go over the ways you can adjust levels of your sounds on the Lofi12 XT. The first way is with velocity. You have to have the velocity sensitivity enabled on your track to use this method. This parameter is part of your sequence and lets you lower the volume of certain notes in your pattern's track, either by using the velocity sensitive pads when playing patterns live, or by parameter locking the value to recorded notes. The next way is by adjusting the amplitude of your track from the amp page. By increasing or decreasing the volume parameter, you can adjust the volume of the sounds on that track. And then there's effects. From the EFX page, you can use effects like overdrive or the compressor to make your sounds louder. And filters are another way of adjusting levels, either by boosting or cutting certain frequencies. And lastly, there's the mix page. This mixer style overview lets you visualize the levels of your track and make adjustments to those levels. Once you've recorded a sound into the device, you have far fewer options for increasing the levels than you do for decreasing the levels. There are no audio editing tools like normalize after the sound has been recorded. So I recommend trying to record in with a strong signal to give you more options when you're mixing. Alright, let's get back to the mix page. On the mix page, each track is represented in a decibel meter style display. As the sounds on the track trigger, they display their loudness in decibels by filling up these columns. You can increase or decrease the levels and a few other parameters of each track by selecting the pad for the track, then turning one of the knobs. The A knob controls the levels. By default, each track is set to 100, but you can increase or decrease the levels of any sound coming from the tracks by adjusting this parameter. The B knob controls the pan parameter for the track, which allows you to move sounds in the stereo field. The C knob controls the delay send. The D knob controls the reverb send. Just like with the C knob, this is the same control on the amp page that lets you adjust how strong a signal goes to the reverb send. The auxiliary buttons also have important functions. The right auxiliary button enables global mode. Basically, this makes it so that the level parameters you've set for the tracks, the A knob value, will persist across any pattern that you load in the project. It doesn't save the pan, delay send, or reverb send parameters though, just the track levels. Here's an example where I set the levels of the first 3 tracks in my pattern. Then I enable global mode and load up a different pattern. This new pattern now has the same level parameters for those tracks as I set on the other pattern. It's not a permanent change though. When you disable global mode, the parameters return to whatever they were set to for that pattern before global mode was enabled. This would probably be a useful feature if you were only working on one beat per project, but I find it more efficient to create several beats in a single project. Since the levels on tracks will vary based on the sounds I use, I tend to stay away from global mode. And then there's Master Effects. The left auxiliary button opens the Master Effects page. From here you can select one of two effects to apply to the entire mix. The A knob lets you select the effect type, and the B knob lets you enable the effect. The first effect is a filter. This allows you to apply one of three filter types to the entire mix: a low pass, band pass, or high pass filter. With a filter selected, you can adjust the frequency and resonance of the filter with the C and D knobs. Then if you press the left auxiliary button, you can select the filter type with the A knob. The master filter is a decent utility, but you could also use it as a performance effect by enabling it on a copy of one of your patterns and playing it live by turning the knobs. Another use for the master filter is giving your mix a boost to the low end by enabling the high pass filter, setting the frequency to 0, and then increasing the resonance. Back on the main master effect page, the other effect you can select is a compressor. Full disclosure, I'm not an expert when it comes to compression, and honestly, I try to avoid using it because I find it a lot more difficult to control than simply adjusting levels. So the information I'm going to share here is based on my observations of how this effect works, but if you're interested in learning more about compression, I definitely recommend doing some research and checking out some videos where the sole topic is compression. Alright. Back to the video. The compressor on this device is actually quite versatile. It has the standard compressor controls like ratio, threshold, attack, and release, and by default, it will affect the sounds of all tracks. You can also set up a sidechain with the compressor, which lets you duck out targeted tracks when the source track plays. To enable this feature, turn the C knob to select a sidechain source track. This should be a track that you want to emphasize, like the kick drum or the bass line. Then you have to select tracks to target, which would become quieter when there's a signal from the source track. To do this, highlight the track number by turning the D knob. Then once the track you want to target has a box around it, press the D knob down to select the track. It will now be highlighted yellow to indicate that it is an active target. You can select multiple tracks by repeating this process. And the S option at the end allows you to target the audio coming from the send effect. This only affects audio coming from the delay and reverb sends, not the effects from the EFX page. Let's take a look at an example. Say I want the sample chops to get quieter when my kick drum plays. I can set the source of the sidechain compression as the track that has my kick drum, track 3, and then target the sample chops track, track 1, and then I'll make some quick adjustments to the compressor parameters. Now when the kick plays, the sample chops get quieter, which emphasizes the kick. You have a lot of options when it comes to adjusting levels and shaping your mix in the Lofi-12 XT, and the Master Effects can help you take it a step further. So when should you consider using Master Effects? Well, the compressor is good for driving your signal. If you notice that a pattern you're working on is lower in volume than other patterns in your project, you could consider using the compressor to increase the sound a bit. Or if you have a track that's not cutting through the mix well enough, you can set up sidechain compression to make it a little more prominent. And the filter can come in handy if you want to shave off some unwanted frequencies in the high end. Or you can combine it with mixtape mode's cassette type presets to get some interesting control over your sounds. Well, that does it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.